Hey guys, this is Dave Cummings from Pathways Community Church in Santee, California. Thanks for joining me for this week's mental health check-in. Right, that's I guess what we're calling this. Right, we just want to make sure we're talking to each other, we're checking in on each other, and we're doing what we can to handle this quarantine as well as we possibly can. What I want to do is I want to pick up with Pastor Phil's message from the past few weeks. He's been preaching from the book of James. And one of the themes that's come up at the beginning of James and at the end of James is this theme of patience. And in fact, if you heard his message this past weekend, you heard a lot about patience. So I want to pick up with that again, because it turns out that patience, for many of us, is the key to our well-being, to being happy and joyful and content and not stressed and not anxious and not depressed. Many of us have whatever the opposite of patience is, impatience, I guess, right? And we want things to hurry up and be over with, and we want whatever it is we want it right now, right? And back in Jesus's time, the same thing was going on, just a little bit different, maybe some different ideas, different things that they were impatient about. But what I want to do is I want to go to James 1 first, because in James 1, he first introduces this idea of patience, right? In starting with verse 2, he says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." It's a form of patience, right? "Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Anybody want to be spiritually mature? That's a huge part of our overall well-being, not just our spiritual well-being, but being spiritually mature is part of our mental, emotional, even our physical well-being. We scroll down towards the bottom of James 1 in verse 12. He says, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him." All right, we got to remember that patience is easy when things aren't hard, right? When everything's going your way, patience is a piece of cake. In fact, it's kind of a non-issue. When patience really is tested, when patience really is required, is when we're struggling in one form or another. We're struggling with the way somebody else is behaving. We're struggling with the way that our government is quarantining us or reopening or whatever it happens to be, right? Our patience has to be focused on a particular challenge. That's when it really comes out. And the word patience and perseverance here refers to a steadfastness, right? A remaining under the load was the way that Pastor Phil talked about it this past week. Refusing to bail out and give up. Patience in suffering. And he talked about what we could do while we wait. Keeping our eyes on eternity, keeping that big picture, that eternal perspective in mind can be so helpful. You've all heard that phrase, "this too shall pass." When I was a kid, I always thought that was from the Bible. Turns out it's not in the Bible, but it really is a biblical perspective. This too shall pass. That nothing we experience on this earth is permanent. Even the worst things, even the lifelong things that we experience on this earth are not permanent, because this earth is not permanent and our life here is not permanent. Doesn't mean it doesn't matter. It matters tremendously. But the phrase, "this too shall pass," really does mean something, right? Pastor Phil said, "The day will come." It's the same idea, whatever that day happens to be. Whether it's you've been waiting for COVID to let up, and you go to your favorite burrito shop, which by the way is now open if that's Estrada's. Whatever it happens to be, whatever you're suffering through right now, it will pass and the day will come. It's not always easy to see that day. Maybe you're struggling with one of your kids. The day will come. This particular struggle with that kid will actually pass eventually. If you've got older kids, think about when your kids were young and how hard it was to imagine them ever growing up and leaving home. And yet they did, right? And you look back and you say, wow, it was the blink of an eye. How did that possibly happen so fast? You really couldn't wrap your brain around this thing that was so far in advance and so different from what you were currently experiencing. But the same is true with the end of our suffering. Whatever it is you're struggling with. You're struggling with quarantine, you're struggling with illness, you're struggling with relationships, struggling financially or with your job or your marriage, your kids, you name it, whatever you're struggling with, this will also pass. There will be a time For some of your struggles, it'll be 2 days from now when things will be lifted and they'll be changed. For some of it may be 2 years or 20 years, but this too shall pass. And it's really important for us to hang on to that concept. Now, if we jump up to James 5, which is what Phil preached on this past week, the whole idea of patience comes back again, right? James says, "Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming." And he gives the example of a farmer patiently waiting for the crops to come up. He says, "Brothers and sisters, and as an example of patience in the face of suffering, consider the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. And we counted them blessed who persevered." And then he says, remember Job and Job's patience, right? The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. You may not be feeling that right now. It may be hard for you to believe that right now because of what you're in the middle of. But remember, this too shall pass. And that's true for every trial that we're ever going to face. Psalm 46:10 is one of my favorites. And part of that verse is really short. And it says, "Be still and know that I am God." And many of us have heard that before. And we've tried to interpret it in a variety of ways. But that stillness before God, where we just quiet ourselves, we even quiet our prayers to where we're not just asking me anymore, but we quiet ourselves and we try to quiet that inner monologue, that chatter that's always going on up here, so that God can speak to us and we can actually hear him. Because when we're talking to ourselves continuously, and when the radio and the TV are on and the phone is going and everything's going all the time, it's really difficult for us to hear that still small voice of the Holy Spirit. And the other part of this, it's really important, and it's a tough one sometimes for us to believe, and it's a tough one for us to want to embrace, is that being still with God, being patient in our suffering, allows us to go deeper with him. Let's think about that. How many times when you're in the middle of a struggle, let's say you're sick, you've got the flu or something like that, you're vomiting, something horrible that you just want to be over. Your prayers aren't usually, at least if you're anything like me, your prayers aren't usually something like, "Oh God, take me deeper with you through this experience." And yet, being still and knowing that he is God allows us to go deeper with him. In fact, when we try to rush past a struggle, and get through it as quickly and as painlessly as we possibly can, which is honestly normal human behavior, right? It robs us of the opportunity to go deeper with God. When I was at my lowest point with anxiety and depression many years ago, I listened to a message. I'm almost certain it was David Jeremiah. And one of the things he said, I wrote this down, he said, "Going deeper with God requires that we spend time with him in the hard times." It requires time, right? If your struggle lasts 15 minutes, there's only so deep you can go with God. If your struggle lasts 15 days or 15 months or 15 years, you have the opportunity to go deeper and deeper and deeper with God the longer you sit in that struggle. And I think that may be what James was getting at way back in chapter 1 when he said, "Consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds." Because those trials provide us an opportunity to go deeper with God. So here's what I want to do. I want to give you an opportunity to give me some feedback. Tell me how you're doing. Tell me how I can be praying for you. And to entice you to do this, Pastor Mike did this a couple of days ago, to entice you to participate. The first 100 people that actually get back to me and participate in this got 2 Starbucks gift cards, $10 a piece. So if you like Starbucks or you know somebody that does, make sure you enter in this and give me some good information. And I promise I will actually read these. If you ask me to pray for you, I will pray for you. And I will take the time to really read all of these and consider them. So here's what you do. I'm not going to send you, well, I am going to send you a text, but not in the same way the church has been doing it. What I want you to do is I want you to text the word wellness, WELLNESS, text wellness to the number 55498. Text wellness to 55498. You're going to get a little link that's going to have a very short survey, shorter than Pastor Mike's. His was long. He said his was short. Now his was crazy. It took me hours. This one is going to take you a couple of minutes. And for the first 100 people that actually respond to it, I'll put your name in a drawing for 2 Starbucks gift cards. So I hope you're going to take me up on that. Text wellness to 55498 and then complete I think it's like 3 or 4 questions total on there. Not much at all, just to check in. I really want to get a sense of how everybody at the church is managing right now. Last thing I want to mention, then I'm going to let you go. I'm really interested in talking to people that maybe we're familiar with in one form or another about their mental health and how they take care of themselves, particularly if they're Christians. And so I had a great opportunity yesterday to interview Tony Bancroft. Tony is a director and an animator for Disney. So maybe you haven't heard the name Tony Bancroft, but I bet you've heard of Pumbaa. I bet you've heard of Iago. I bet you've heard of Kronk. Or Mulan, which he was the director for. Tony's an amazing guy, and I was able to connect with him, and we had just a great interview, and I'm going to post that for you. So by the time you're hearing this message, which should be on Friday, go check my website, davidedwardcummings.com, go to videos, and the first new video should be that interview with Tony Bancroft, solid Christian man who's had just a fascinating career and has a really interesting perspective on self-care. And, Lion King, right? Hakuna Matata. You got to hear what Tony has to say about this, so I hope you're going to check it out. It's been great talking with you guys. Take care of yourselves. Reach out to me. I can't wait to hear from you through this wellness survey. Remember, text wellness to that number that I gave you, 55498. 55498. I'll see you guys later.